She'll be right, mate. That's a favourite saying, isn't it? She'll be right. But she's not right.
He looked at me and he goes, Tanya, I'm sorry to say, but you've got this f***ing disease, this bastard of a disease.
Every year I manage 50 to 60 deaths of people that I've looked after for months, years, decades. I want it to stop.
How would I describe the disease? A little bit of us dies every day.
This is a bastard of a disease.
Thanks to the Ice Bucket Challenge and the courage of sufferers like AFL legend Neil Danaher.
My vision is a world without MND. I'll get there. I might be 6 foot under, but we'll get there.
Australians are perhaps more aware than ever of the horrifying realities of motor neuron disease.
Every 12 hours, one Australian is diagnosed with MND.
Every 12 hours, one Australian dies from MND.
But two important questions remain unanswered. Why is it killing so many Australians, and how on earth do we do something about it?
If we understand the environmental factors that cause motor neuron disease, this gives us potential toeholds into not only prevention, but we potentially can develop therapies that slow and stop this bastard.
Neurologist Dominic Rowe is perhaps Australia's foremost expert on motor neuron disease.
This is the cruelest disease imaginable. It robs you of your ability to walk, to use your hands, to talk, to swallow, and ultimately it takes away your ability to breathe and it kills you.
Motor neuron disease is actually more like a collection of diseases that attack the nerve cells or neurons that control and coordinate our muscles. Eventually, these motor neurons degenerate and die. It will kill as many as 800 Australians this year. Another 800 will be diagnosed.
It attacks you mercilessly. It's relentless. From its onset to death, the average survival is around about 36 to 40 months. That's with the best medical care available.
At the Macquarie University in Sydney, Professor Rowe cares for more than 200 MND sufferers, roughly 10% of all Australians living with the disease. But in recent years, his work increasingly brings him to Griffith and the New South Wales Riverina, a region famous for its farm produce that's becoming infamous for being home to a disturbing number of MND cases.
Motor neuron disease in Australia currently affects 1 in 14,000 in the population. In Griffith, we understand that there are 12 to 13 patients currently with motor neuron disease. Given the population, we think that this is a 2 to 3-fold increased incidence of motor neuron disease in Griffith alone. This afternoon we're going to see Mim Payson. Mim is the widow of Joe, who was one of my patients who died just over a year ago.
I'm so glad you're here.
Some people with motor neuron disease, like Joe, it affects speaking and swallowing first. It then affects breathing, and this is the form of motor neuron disease that is the most rapidly fatal.
His farm was, you could say, his second love because he loved his family, but the farm was his pride and joy. I'm sure he's growing oranges up in heaven because that was his passion. Joe was 69 when we noticed that there was something not right with him. I'll never forget the day we were told. It was on the 12th of November 2014. He said, "Well, doctor, I've got my death sentence." We walked out of St Vincent Hospital, and for about an hour, Joe didn't utter a word. He passed away on the 2nd of September, so that's not even 12 months. To me, Joe is still there, even though I don't see him. His shoes, his boots that he had on when he was on the farm that morning, they're still the veranda where he left them, took them off, and that's where they are.
Joe's motor neuron disease was sporadic, out of the blue, a 1 in 42,000 chance of developing motor neuron disease that we think was triggered by the environment. 10% of people with motor neuron disease is caused by inheriting a faulty gene. But the 900-pound gorilla is the 90% of patients who have sporadic motor neuron disease.
Well, I've never drank in my life and I never smoked in my life, you know. Maybe I should have, you know.
Albert Brown has been farming in the Riverina for 60 years. Last November, he was diagnosed with sporadic motor neuron disease.
I reckon probably I've had it for years before that. Laying in bed one night and the wife looked at me back, she said, "This looks like water flowing across my back, you know, the way it's twitching all the time. And weight coming off me and bones and skinny all the time, you know, so yeah. Shouldn't been happening. Years ago, I'd lump 180-pound bags of weed every, you know, sort of thing, but couldn't lift an empty bloody bag now. But that's about all I know about that motor neuron. Bastard, I think.
Albert lives around 90 minutes drive from Griffith in the small community of Lake Cargellico. This tiny town is well known for its water sports and is home to a population of around 1,000. And yet Albert is one of at least 4 residents currently living with motor neuron disease.
There's nothing brighter about the beast of the disease.
Arguably, you know, yeah, way of life, and you know.
As well as Albert, there's local nurse Susie Fisher.
The nurse in me made me aware that I had motor neuron disease a very long time ago. We know that we're going to not be able to talk. We know that we're not going to be able to swallow or move or do anything. We know what's ahead, and that's a very frightening thing.
Then there's Tim Trembath.
I was diagnosed early in 2013. I first noticed a weakness in my right bicep. It's moved down my arms, in my hands and shoulders. Now I can't do anything. I've got my wife to help me shower and dress. I drink through a straw. You know, I can't lift a cup of coffee or anything like that.
Don Ridley is here representing his father Cole.
He's diagnosed in November, so 8 or 9 months ago. He's sort of unwell, he's in hospital at the moment and he's doing pretty hard at the moment, so.
Like Griffith and Lake Cargellico, there are other towns in the New South Wales Riverina that have seemingly far higher rates of motor neuron than the rest of the country. No one can yet say for certain if it represents what the medical profession calls a cluster, but there's no doubting it's a hotspot, at a time where the threat of MND has never been greater.
Over the last 30 years, motor neuron disease has increased as a cause of death in Australia by more than 250%. That has to be environmental. It cannot be genetic.
Both the sufferers and the man trying to keep them alive believe at least some of the answers lie in the district's greatest environmental asset. It's water.
Something has happened in the environment in our natural waterways to change them. Are they associated with motor neuron disease? Perhaps. One of the theories of sporadic motor neuron disease is exposure to environmental toxins that selectively target motor neurons. Some of those toxins may include toxins that are derived from blue-green algae.
For years now, huge toxic blooms of blue-green algae have been a common sight in the Riverina. They've led to many of the lakes and waterways of the district being closed to the public.
If it's unfit for recreation, is it fit for irrigation?
Blue-green algae is technically not an algae at all. It's a bacteria, cyanobacteria, which can produce one of the suspected culprits behind MND, a neurotoxin called BMAA. When exposed to humans, BMAA mimics an amino acid that our bodies naturally use to make proteins.
There's a whole body of science showing how BMAA misincorporates into protein to cause cellular dysfunction and death. This is not just a theory. BMAA is a dangerous toxin.
The blue-green algae theory would fit me fairly well because, you know, I've worked on the river for nearly 30 years. I've seen really poisonous blooms where it looks like someone's tipped blue or silver paint on the water.
Lake Angelico was actually the first town in the country to have its water supply prohibited because of blue-green algae way back in 1990.
I swam in this lake all my life, and I believe that there is something with the water.
But there are other theories. The New South Wales Riverina is prime farming land, and many of its residents have extensive histories of exposure to a range of pesticides and insecticides.
You get drenched sometime. You know, we were spraying, everything was done by hand.
Mucking around with chemical all my life, open air tractors and marking for aeroplanes going over, you know, getting covered in chemical.
I recall actually mixing a chemical with my hands. You know, there was no real WH&S stuff for that. Put my arm in a drum and stir it around.
This is a very complex environment. Trying to tease out the different strands that may be involved in motor neurone disease is going to be difficult. But if you want to learn to swim, you don't sit in the bathtub.
But these swimmers may help provide some answers. At the MND Research Centre at Sydney's Macquarie University, scientists are using zebrafish to test possible causes of the disease.
These factors, these environmental factors that we suspect may cause motor neuron disease, we can actually put those into these fish because they're transparent and we can see the nerves as they grow in real time in the living animal.
With the use of a fluorescent dye, researchers are able to map the progress of the disease as the fish develop from egg to adult in just 3 days. The research centre is the largest of its kind in the country, with more than 50 scientists dedicated to tackling motor neuron disease.
The ultimate aim is to try and make a fish which develops motor neuron disease quite rapidly. And we can then treat lots and lots of fish with different compounds and drug libraries to try and find one of those compounds that may give us a cure for motor neuron disease.
We still don't have a smoking gun. Indeed, in sporadic motor neuron disease, it's highly likely that we're going to have more than one factor involved in the production of the disease.
Dom Rowe also believes that understanding the environmental factors involved in sporadic motor neuron disease may help unravel some of the mysteries of the genetically inherited form.
It's possible that the same factors that are involved in sporadic motor neuron disease may be involved in the production of familial motor neuron disease, but we don't have the data to answer that question.
This is a disease that's going to affect all of us, and it's something that has frightened us ever since.
Back in Griffith, sisters Tanya and Michelle have already seen twice before what MND does to a person.
We didn't realise that it was genetic, especially when Pop was diagnosed. We didn't realise until Mum was diagnosed that, okay, there must be a connection.
She burst into tears and I said, "You know what this is, don't you?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Is this what Pop had?" And she said, "Yes."
The symptoms of their mother Karen's form of motor neuron disease were aggressive.
It started in her mouth, so within a couple of months of being diagnosed, Mum couldn't talk, and within 6 months she couldn't eat, couldn't swallow.
Karen died within 12 months of being diagnosed. Dom Rowe helped care for their mother. So in 2011, when Tanya realised something was wrong, she knew where to go.
How you going? Not so good, huh?
Yeah. When Dominic diagnosed me, he called me into the room and he looked at me and he goes, "Tanya, I'm sorry to say, but you've got this f***ing disease, this bastard of a disease." And then he just grabbed my hands and then he cuddled me.
By the time of their mother's diagnosis, the sisters had already started families of their own. Both have children. They also have another brother and a sister. All live in the shadow of this disease.
The risk of Tanya inheriting that faulty gene from her mum Karen was 50-50, and unfortunately Tanya drew the short straw.
Given there's 4 siblings in our family, and with Tanya being diagnosed, we're just assuming that there's going to be at least one other that's going to be diagnosed, and we don't know which one it's going to be, and we can't find out either.
Dom and his team have yet to isolate the particular faulty gene that has caused Tanya and Karen's motor neuron disease.
I've already been tested for 4 and they've all came back negative. And it costs a lot of money to get tested, but there's another one that they've just found, another gene, and now they're going to test me for that. I want to find the gene for my children, because I know one of them's going to get it. So I want to know the gene.
Dom and his team also want to know why Tanya developed symptoms so young.
Tanya's first symptoms began 5 to 6 years ago in her 30s. Her mum, Karen, her symptoms only began in her 60s. Some of the factors may well be in the interplay between the environment and genes. There are no two patients with motor neurone disease who are the same. Tanya, fortunately, thus far, has a slow and indolent progression of this bastard.
I want to get to 18 years. That's the longest in Australia so far, is 18 years. So that's my aim, beat that one, get in the record books.
Tanya and Michelle are now the driving force behind a local support group, as well as fundraisers for Dom's clinic. Motor neuron research has experienced a revolution in funding in the past few years, and it's paying off. Macquarie is about to launch separate drug trials for people with sporadic and familial MND. It's early days, but Dom Rowe believes with these and further drugs still in development, there is finally a potential to slow or perhaps even stop this bastard of a disease.
This is personal. You know, yesterday one of my patients died, a 26-year-old mother. I hate this disease with a passion. I want it to stop.
For the Riverina sufferers, a cure may be too much to ask for, but hope is always welcome.
It's not going to happen in my time. It may not happen even in the generation after me. But after that, with research, they will be able to find a cure for this disease.
Well, I hope they figure it out for future generations. It won't do me much bloody good, I don't think, but might keep me going a bit longer.
I don't want anyone to be diagnosed anymore and told, see you later, go home. You're going to die. I just don't want that anymore. I just want to have some bit of hope.